5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Here we go. It's game time. Unforgettable.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Welcome to Sports and More, where almost anything goes. Coming to you from the marsh just outside of Edmonton, Alberta, here's your host, Dean Millard.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Nice to be in orbit.
Man, if they can get playoffs this year, both these teams, and they meet, like, let's say it's a 2-3 matchup in the Pacific, buddy.
Wow.
Like,
imagine home ice advantage being on the line in that final game of the season.
And knowing you're
playing them. And so the winner of that game gets game 7, Calgary or Edmonton. Even that game will be amazing for a final game of the season.
That would be insane. That would be, like, I don't know how this province would handle a best of 7. Like, we could barely handle Tkachuk getting ragdolled by Kassian.
Yeah.
Imagine a best of 7, man. It would be the greatest thing to happen to hockey in this country in a long, like those playoff outside of a team Stanley Cup run to the final for the Oilers or the Flames or the Senators or whoever. This would be next level. Like, it would be insane. And
Hello there, and welcome to Sports and More, the podcast, episode 33, where almost anything goes. My name is Dean Millard, and you just heard from Dustin Nielsen from TSN 1260 as we were chatting about the Battle of Alberta possibly extending into the postseason for the first time since the 90s. Dusty's going to join me for a fun hour-long conversation. We talked about the Super Bowl, the halftime show. You'll love what I was listening to during the halftime show. I had the video on, listened to different audio. We'll talk about the Battle of Alberta, as mentioned. The Oilers in general. Of course, Jesse Puljujarvi will come up. We're going to talk about his career path as well, and something fun. I'm going to put him on the spot a little bit. We're going to do TSN 1260 employees in one word, and saddest TV moments. So all of that and more to discuss with Dustin Nielsen of TSN 1260. But before we get to that, we have a little business to take care of. Our top 3 today, brought to you by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Fantasy sports are great, and now with Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, it's more realistic than ever. Own one of there's only 31 professional fantasy hockey franchises in the world, and you can own one of them. 23-man rosters, a 27-player reserve list to stockpile for the future, daily roster moves, a wickedly unique playoff format, and they're not just players on your roster. They're digital assets. You can use digital currency to buy and sell players. You can build a championship team. You can stockpile for the future. Only a few franchises left of the 31 available, and you can get your own by bidding right now at www.airauctioneer.com/UFF sports-NHL-fantasy-auction. Open your free account, make your bid. You'll be notified if you are outbid. www.airauctioneer.com/UFF sports-NHL-fantasy-franchise-auction. In this format, you own the game, so get in the game.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
Let's go! Time for your top 3.
Liftoff and the clock has started.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So today on our top 3, presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, we are discussing your top 3 saddest TV moments. Dusty and I discussed this in the interview, so I thought it would be fitting for our top 3. My honorable mention is every ending to The Littlest Hobo. I mean, like, seriously, how sad was it that this guy just couldn't find a home? I'm starting to think he didn't want a home. I'm starting to think maybe he just was an attention seeker. I'm going to solve crimes, pretend I'm needy, and then I'm going to book out. I don't know. But it was sad every time. Number 3, I'm going back to my teen years with this show. Paul and Jamie Buckman splitting up at the end of Mad About You. It crushed me. I loved that show. Big Helen Hunt fan. Big Helen Hunt fan. And I was crushed when they started splitting up. And for some reason, I haven't jumped back into the reboot yet. So I'll have to do that at some point because, yeah, I was a big Helen Hunt fan and still am. So that's Paul and Jamie Buckman splitting up is my number 3. The red wedding scene in Game of Thrones is number 2. It just was so shocking, and some bad things happened to some really important characters. And yeah, I think the shock value was more first, and then you're like, wow, that was really sad. Because it was supposed to be such a happy time. And number 1, and I'm gonna try and do this without crying. Opie Winston, Sons of Anarchy. It's just such a poignant moment between two best friends, and the way they shot it and edited it. I'm getting choked up even thinking about it right now. So every ending to The Littlest Hobo is my honorable mention. Paul and Jamie Buckman splitting up in Mad About You, the red wedding scene in Game of Thrones, and Opie Winston, Sons of Anarchy. This is our top 3, and it is, of course, presented by UFF Sports, Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. And we threw this out on Twitter. Smashy, Rhino Hashi says the "We Will All Fall" speech from Friday Night Lights, the "Where Wallace At" scene in The Wire, and the Sophia scene on The Walking Dead. Hashtag no spoilers. The Sophia scene was gut-wrenching in The Walking Dead. Ken Liu says Game of Thrones, Hodor holding the door knowing his fate, and then you find out what Hodor means. The Good Place series finale. And by the way, there's spoiler alerts for a lot of these. So there's a Breaking Bad spoiler alert coming up, giving you a chance. If you haven't watched that whole series yet, or you're going to get to it, you can skip ahead. His number 3 is Breaking Bad, when Hank Walter's brother-in-law is killed. Lynn Mercero says Letterman's last show. Here's a spoiler alert for The Good Wife. If you haven't watched The Good Wife yet, you may want to skip ahead. Will Gardner is shot and killed on The Good Wife, and Wayne Gretzky's retirement game. That was sad. I think I still have that on VHS. And if you've never seen MASH, you might want a spoiler alert. Henry Blake's death on MASH, if you've never seen that TV series, which is a really good TV series to watch. I would highly recommend you getting into MASH. The movie was good. The TV series is really good. By the way, I want to let you know what's up at Podcast Alley. You can find that at podcastalley.ca. Todd Hubka, the head coach for the Prairie Baseball Academy, joined Jordan Blundell and myself yesterday on the Prospects Baseball Show. We also did Play and Pepper with Todd. That will come out a couple of days from now. Wendy Forwell is on the most recent edition of the Cannabis 101 podcast. She is with Cannabis Hotels. So you want to have a cannabis-friendly vacation, head to Cannabis Hotels. We also did One Hitters with Wendy. She's the CEO of Cannabis Hotels, and got to know her a little bit more. And later today, Nathan Meissen is going to be joining the Cannabis 101 podcast. He is the vice president of stakeholder and government relations for Fire and Flower. We covered a lot of stuff. If you want to know why stuff has happened, or what is going on when it comes to regulations and things like that, there is no better person to chat to than Nathan. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. That'll be up later today. And by the way, you can find all of that at podcastalley.ca. And you might be listening to us on 12 Ounce Sports. Thank you if you are. Live radio and TV, hockey, lacrosse, basketball, futsal, and more. Available at 12ouncesportsradio.com. And if you want to get in touch with us, it's simple. At Duck Millard on Twitter, at Sports and More Podcast on Instagram, at Sports and More 35 on Facebook. You can email us sportsandmorepod@gmail.com, and the website is sportsandmore.ca. All right, before we get to our interview with Dustin Nielsen, I want to remind you, we have a gift card from Acme Meat Market up for grabs. You can go say hi to Corey, Amanda, their wonderful staff in the Ritchie Market in Edmonton at 9570 76th Avenue. Check out their website, acmemeatmarket.ca. Your hint is Dustin's education. That is your hint to try to win the $25 gift card from Acme Meat Market. Dustin's education is your hint. Let's get to know our guest, the big man, Dustin Nielsen from TSN 1260, with the bio.
Time for the bio.
Dustin Nielsen was born in Cranbrook, BC, and grew up on a farm just outside of the city. He graduated from Mount Baker High School and enrolled in the broadcast course at Lethbridge Community College in 2001. His first job was in High Prairie, Alberta, where his stay was just 3 months. He was with Any Sport Anytime in Edmonton for a year and a half before heading back to Lethbridge on Country 95.5, where he spent 3.5 years. The North beckoned once again, and he joined Rock 97.9 in Fort McMurray for 2 years before ending up with TSN 1260, where he owns mornings in Edmonton and has been doing it for 10 years. He's also done a lot of play-by-play, most recently at the Spangler Cup and the CFL on TSN. Dustin and his wife Tammy have 2 children. Dusty, it is a pleasure to have you in studio here at Podcast Alley. Thanks very much for coming out.
Oh, it's a good, buddy. I was hoping to get in here one day. I see you got a lot of. It's cool seeing it in person because you see a bunch of pictures, like this Viking Cup jersey. I called that tournament.
Yeah, that's why I put that up today.
Yeah,
you know,
I
try to have, and I'm sure you watched a little bit of Youngblood at some point.
Youngblood, not as much as you.
Yeah, and then little North Dakota Fighting Sioux.
Yeah, that's good. 04-06 Viking Cup I did. It was
a great tournament.
Great tournament. I was so sad when they stopped doing the Viking Cup.
I was a big fan of it. Guy Flaming got me really into the Viking Cup because he did some work there.
He did color for me.
Yeah. Oh, he did.
Yeah. He was. We called some legendary games in that tournament. Yeah,
and we would go out there every once in a while for Global and do some stories. It was fun to see international. And you know what? That was when international teams were a bit of a mystery still.
100%. I remember this Czech team came into the 04-06 one, and they had these 2 15-year-old kids. And we're like, wow, there was a U18 team. And the 2 15-year-old kids were Michael Frolik and Yuri Talusti.
Yeah.
And these 2 kids torched that tournament. Like, it was insane. So, yeah, it was a fun tournament. I'm sad that's not around anymore.
I remember Thomas Vanek had a special relationship with that tournament and the people. And remember when he almost became an Oiler, that was one of the things that was talked about, is that he's got this relationship in Alberta.
There's a few guys. I mean, the one event, Tuukka Rask was there. Paul Stastny was playing. Kyle Okposo were on like this U.S. They basically brought like the USHL All-Star team. So there was a ton of really good players there. I always liked Jesse Joensuu. He was at that event. He was a beast in that event.
Everyone did. I think people referred to that a lot of the times when he became an Oiler.
When they brought him an Oiler, I was just like, man, this guy lit up the Viking Cup 10 years ago, but obviously it never worked out.
All right, Super Bowl yesterday. There was a lot of hype for this game with the amount of offense that these teams, the Chiefs and everything that they can do. And the 49ers running game. I just want to skip to the last minute of the first half. Does that not? I don't have a lot of confidence in my quarterback, or what is that?
100%.
No timeout.
100%. We're sitting there watching it, and I'm looking at him like, why don't you call a timeout here?
Same
You
with
get the
me.
ball back with
Yeah.
150 left, because they could.
John Lynch was doing that, right?
Yeah, you're like, what? Why aren't you taking a timeout here? You get a $150, and then you can move the ball back down the field. Worst case scenario, you get into field goal range, and so they don't do that. So they get the ball, and then you're sitting there going, okay, well, pass play. Then they run it for like 6 or 7 yards or whatever it was. You're like, okay, timeout. Nope, no timeout. So they're basically just running the clock off. And for me at that moment, and I went into that Super Bowl with like, I didn't really care who won. Like, I'm not a Chiefs guy. I'm not a Niners guy. I said the Chiefs would win, and I bet a little bit of money on the Chiefs, but I didn't care who won. But when I saw the Niners do what they did at the end of the first half, that was the end of it for me. I was like, if you're not going to come out here and try to win a Super Bowl as
didn't
opposed
make
to
sense.
try to not lose a Super Bowl, then I don't have time for you. Like, it was, and then they almost got away with it because the Chiefs called a timeout. Then they went deep and had the OPI and everything. Like,
And as soft as that call seemed to me, it by the letter of the law, it was the right call to make.
Yeah, it probably was offensive pass interference.
It was
tough
just
to call it in that
yeah.
spot in that game when you've seen a lot more obvious ones. But I mean, they didn't. You think the Chiefs would ever do that with Patrick Mahomes?
Not a chance.
Or Tom
And
Brady.
there's no
or Matt Ryan.
Any coach
Yeah.
that has confidence in your Drew Brees, any of those guys, right? And the thing that I found interesting is then they come out in the second half, and Garoppolo doesn't miss anything.
Yeah, well, he was running a lot of play action.
Yeah.
which helps quite a bit, right? Like, I think he was 8 of 9 or something on play action, and the whole game script in the second half was weird for them because they ended up, I think, throwing the ball twice as much as running it in the second half. And even when they got up 20-10 there, they didn't really seem to just try to go ground and pound and go back and forth between Mostert and Tevin Coleman and try to run the game, run the clock out. So it's not a good look for Shanahan, who has now been absolutely torched in fourth quarters and Super Bowls when he was with the Falcons.
That's right.
And now with the Niners. Like, he's been outscored 46-0 in fourth quarters and overtime. So, I mean, that's a blemish. Like, that's something you got to get sorted out here.
Yeah, that's something that could like follow his career as
For sure.
Kind of like what happened with Pete Carroll on that call. Like, people are remembered. Mark Crawford in the Olympics.
Yeah.
People remember your failures more than your successes.
Or Andy Reid. Like, on the other side of this thing, Andy Reid's reputation going into this was not being able to manage the clock properly his entire coaching
That's right.
career.
Yeah.
And now he's got one. So it sticks with you, man. People, sports fans and NFL fans, do not forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about the Chiefs and the fact that they just didn't care how far they were behind in any of the games in the playoffs?
Yeah, it was rather remarkable. In fact, I was thinking about it this morning. I was like, you know what? When they were down by 10, probably could have got a pretty good bet on them at that point. 'Cause
Oh, yeah.
It was looking, and I think they were down, or they had like, the Niners had like a 96.7% chance of winning in the fourth quarter, which means
Which would have
the odds-
made me happy
which means-
because I bet them heavily.
Did you?
Well,
Ah,
heavily
yeah,
for
yeah.
me anyway.
Yeah, the Niners, you bet have
The Niners, yeah.
that's tough. But yeah, no, the Chiefs just had, it almost seemed like they needed to be down before they decided, like, oh, wait a second.
It's like they're toying with everybody.
The Chiefs are clearly better when Patrick Mahomes and their offense in general is like, okay, we got to go. We got to push it. We got to move things.
Yeah.
And they just, I mean, the Texans game was insane.
Yeah.
And then what they managed to do in the AFC Championship game was pretty impressive. Well, very impressive. And this one, you're almost like, you just get the sense that if Mahomes hit one big one, that was all they needed. And he found Hill on that huge one on 3rd and 15. And at that point, it was like lights out.
So, a halftime show fan?
I liked it. I'm surprised how many people are like, just seeing some text messages from people and chatting with a few guys who are like, my daughters can't watch that. And I'm like, well, then just turn it off. Like, that's fine. If you don't want your kids to watch that, that's okay.
That's easy to do.
But for a Miami halftime show with J-Lo and Shakira, that's exactly what you expected. Like, a lot of dancing, a lot of hip shaking, a lot of ass wiggling. And, I'd probably say
Nobody was
I recognized about
naked.
60% of the music.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody was naked. You didn't see a boob. Like, so yeah, I thought for what else were you expecting Shakira and J-Lo to do?
Yeah.
Like, that's what they were going to do. They were going to stand up together side by side and shake their butts and then wrap it up. And that's what we were here for. So I really liked it. I thought it was pretty good.
I basically listened to it with the sound off. I literally did. It's not my type of music, so I didn't. I'll see if I can get this to work. This is what I listened to during the halftime show.
When lava pours out near the sea surface, tremendous volcanic explosions sometimes occur.
It's called a band called Boards of Canada. It's just weird sounds.
I like to imagine that with them dancing to this music.
Yeah,
though.
it was really. Yeah. So anyway, that's. So I just turned the sound down and watched them dance while listening to strange sounds from Boards of Canada.
You got the gist of it.
I did,
Like pretty
yes.
much. That's all you needed to see.
And that's the thing. If you don't like the halftime show, don't watch it. Nobody's forcing you. It's not that big of a deal.
If you sit there and go, man, I watched the whole halftime show and it sucked, then that's on you. Because
Yeah, that's
it
right.
doesn't get worse throughout. Like, if only thing, it's going to get better. So if you didn't like the first 2 minutes, then go take a piss, grab a bite to eat, and come back for
That's
halftime.
right.
Like,
Yeah. Maybe go smoke a joint or
Yeah,
something
exactly.
like
Do
that.
that too,
Then
yeah.
you'll probably really love
Yeah,
it.
then
John.
you're coming back in and being like, wow, these chicks are awesome.
Okay, what was awesome was the Battle of Alberta. And how many times have we hyped up a rematch only for it to fizzle out and nothing happened? And the exact opposite of that happened in this situation. I mean, that game on Saturday night was ridiculous. It was like 1980. All you were missing was somebody shredding a shirt with a skate.
Yeah, pretty much right. And a mascot's tongue being
That's right.
ripped out.
Yeah.
It was like, I would say like 98, 99% of the time when you're hyping up a game, you get nothing. And we've hyped up 2 of them in the last 5 days and got something in each of them, right? The game on Wednesday was a really good hockey game where some business got taken care of.
The bantamweight bout between Nuge and Monahan was awesome.
Those are the best. First of all, there's not many fights anymore anyway. The best fights you can have are A, a goalie fight, or B, 2 somewhat skilled guys who are unsuspecting and don't play defense in a fight and try to beat the hell out of each other. So, like the game on Saturday was, and from the moment Yamamoto scored early and celebrated the same way Riddick did with his arms out, you knew at that moment the Oilers were pissed off.
He's already
about
a savage.
About the way Riddick ended the last game. And then they just started to pile on. And I'll give Calgary credit. Like, Calgary fought back, made it 4-3. And you know the way what the Oilers are and how sometimes Smith can play. You're like, okay, like, let's see what happens here.
That's
but
right.
they managed to like regroup, got back on track. And then Sam Gagner, who I have loved since the break. I don't know what he did the All-Star break, but he's been flying. Somebody said, hey, did Sam grow over the All-Star break? Because he looks much bigger, but he goes and jabs Talbot. And look, if I was a goalie, man, and well, I used to beat the shit out of
crazy,
everybody with my blocker. Like,
Yeah.
and then as soon as Talbot kind of moved behind the net, you knew Smith, who's rambunctious, right, was going to come down. And when Smith got to center ice,
Nurse
I was
pointing
losing
it
my
out.
mind. Yeah, and Nurse
That's
being like,
amazing.
there's
Yeah.
Smith. Like,
Go.
It was great. And what's funny is that, like, everybody all the time is like, violence in hockey is not good. And I understand where they're coming from, but this was the most talked about regular season moment in half a decade, at least, not even close. And look what it was. It was 2 goalies dropping the gloves, and they were fine. I mean, Talbot might have got hit with 1 or 2. But
This is the best the Battle of Alberta has been in almost 30 years.
yeah, it's funny
Like,
because
it's been-
I've been here for 10. It's definitely 10, but everybody else who's been here longer, like yourself, have been saying like 30 years. So.
Well, I wasn't here. I've only been here since 03. It's definitely the best it's been since then.
Yeah.
And then as a fan, I just go back to watching it, and like Tikkanen in 91, I think. That game winner. Those are the moments I remember because there has been no playoffs.
And you're right. That's 30 years, man. If they can get playoffs this year, both these teams, and they meet, like, let's say, as a 2-3 matchup in the Pacific, buddy.
Wow.
Like-
Imagine home ice advantage being on the line in that final game of the season.
And knowing you're gonna play
knowing you're
again.
playing them. And so the winner of that game gets game 7, Calgary or Edmonton. Even that game will be amazing for a final game of the season.
That would be insane. That would be, like, I don't know how this province would handle a best of 7. Like, we could barely handle Kachuk getting ragdolled by Cassian.
Yeah.
Imagine a best of 7, man. It would be the greatest thing to happen to hockey in this country in a long, like, those playoff outside of a team Stanley Cup run to the final for the Oilers or the Flames or the Senators or whoever. this would be next level. Like, it would be insane. And the whole National Hockey League would be watching.
Oh,
Like,
Sportsnet would be so happy because they would finally be making some money off of that contract.
they would be praying for 7 games.
Yeah.
Because that's, I mean, if you got those types of series, or Toronto, Ottawa, back when like it was Lalime and Spezza going up against those Leafs teams with Sundin, like
Alfredson mimicking Sundin, remember things
throw,
like that?
That type of stuff. We just haven't had that in what seems like forever. So I think now that it's back, it seems like almost even better than it used to be because we haven't seen it for so long.
You've got a goalie doing a stick flip like Batista.
Yeah.
You got Yamamoto mimicking it. Like it's remember Kane and Matthews doing the things to their ears, right? So you've got that going for you as far as that. Plus the advent of social media. I mean, that just takes it to another level. I made a comment about David Rittich yesterday and the stick lift, saying, if you're going to do it, you got to take the heat like he did. Some guy jumped all over me and saying he did take it. I'm like, yeah, I know. Like
That's
just
what you're saying.
Yeah, but people get extra sensitive as fans in the social media age of hockey.
Well, it drives it to another level too. I mean, I don't know, like for players, if they can actually stay off social media and avoid some of the stuff that gets
somebody
said,
said the other day Zach Cassian sounds like he deleted his account.
It looks like his account's not activated anymore.
I would not. There's no way I'd have if I was a professional athlete. I mean, there's not a chance I would have.
I wouldn't have a public account. Like, you might want to have like a fake account so you can follow
like
along other
account.
things that you like.
A Kevin Durant, they call that?
Yeah, the old KD. God, what a goof. But yeah, that's got to be extremely tough for those. Like, and it's great for us. I mean, I was just firing out GIF after gift on Saturday, and people are like, "Oh my God!" It's great. It's great from that, but it's nasty too. Like, you got to be careful what you say on there, or else people, even if it's not how you mean it.
Yeah,
it gets spun in some way.
Yeah, sarcasm does not go well in a text message or an email.
No.
I remember I was sarcastic to a boss once at Global. He's like, "That's a little bit." I'm like, "Dude, I was being sarcastic." He's like, "Oh, okay, well, it doesn't really translate that well
it's nice
sometimes."
to use that to get out of a lot of stuff, even if you did say you're like, "No, I was totally being sarcastic. Don't worry about it."
Yeah, that's the old line. So the Battle of Alberta is alive and well, and the Oilers' playoff hopes are, such a great start. Then there was a dip, which I think we all expected, and maybe it was just handling success for this team is so different. Where do you see them now post-break?
I think they're close to being the best team in that division, man. I like the addition of Yamamoto to the second line with Draisaitl and Nuge has changed the way you look at this team, because they've been one of the best. You can make a case they've been the best line in the league since they were put together.
Draisaitl just named first star of the week, and he was a month player.
Second player of the month because Ovechkin scored 3 goals a game there for a while. I think that changes a lot. Like, Calgary, very good team. They've beaten the Oilers 3-4. I mean, they're a very good team, but I think they might have some issues. Arizona's struggling right now. It's funny, all these teams, like the Canucks had a big slide, and people are like, well, what are the Canucks going to do? Now they've been red hot. The Oilers had their slide. The Flames had a slide midway through the season. And then the Golden Knights have just sort of been up and down the whole way. So I don't want this to take away from these teams, but the Pacific Division is pretty brutal compared to the other divisions. Like, there's no juggernaut
it's
that you
up
have
for
to
grabs,
go through,
right?
Like, so I think the Oilers have just as good a shot of anybody to win that division. And if they can get the McDavid line clicking, and McDavid generates things, but I don't think overall his line has really sort of found their stride without Draisaitl. If they can get that going, and Smith remains, or Smith or Koskinen, whoever remains, good to very good, then they're looking like a playoff team.
Like, their blue line doesn't seem to have a lot of question marks on it right now.
No, I wonder if that's the personnel or if it's the coaching staff doing a good
Probably
job
a little
putting
bit
them
of
in
both.
spots.
I might say 60-40 on the coaching.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that a lot of players have talked about, and I don't know if anybody's really do it, since they've kind of turned things around here, was that a lot of players have said, we made some structural changes, and I wonder if some of the structural changes have been to tighten up as a group a little bit defensively and not leave Smith, because when Smith was struggling there, I didn't like parts of his game, but he was also hung out to dry a ton. And that's when they were like, okay, but you need one of those saves every once in a while. How often have we been saying that really lately? Because teams haven't been getting those types of great chances all the time.
Not 5-star giveaways,
yeah,
right?
so I think they've kind of tightened things up a little bit. And blue line's pretty steady right now. And a lot of those guys still have the opportunity to get a little bit better even here in season. So that's a positive as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Yamamoto and that call up. We'll see what happens the rest of the way with different guys, but it's just so nice to see guys that aren't sent down for 4 games and called up right away, or just rushed, I guess is the right word. And they took their time with Yamamoto, and he's here, and some of those defensemen, they spotted him in.
Yeah.
It's just so nice that there's a few more guys still to come.
Well, like Bear's a good example. Remember Bear was here 2 years ago, and you're like, this guy is going to make this team.
Yeah.
He was penciled in at the beginning of last year. Didn't play a game last year, I don't think. There's like, you're in the American League. That's where you're going to be. Didn't look great at camp. And now look how it's paid off, right? Like Yamamoto, when he was here for the first 2 stints, like the 9 games and then whatever it was, I was watching him and I was like, I don't know if this dude's going to be able to play in the league.
Yeah.
Like, and now he comes back and I'm looking at him going, you look almost as impactful as you were in junior right now, which is how you're supposed to properly develop a player. Like with Benson called up now, I've talked about this a little bit on some of the other stuff I do. Like Benson is a very rare case in the Oilers organization in that he was drafted. It's been 3.5 years. He's played 115 American Hockey League games and hasn't even played a single game in the National Hockey League. Like, tell me the last Oilers prospect who did that. Like, there's no list. Like, it says Tyler Benson at the top. Like, so I like the way that they've handled some of those guys. And if Benson can make even half the impact that Yamamoto's made, man, he might stick around too.
Well, it's so interesting. It's the one thing that Chiarelli's regime did well was draft.
Yeah.
And now this regime is benefiting from it.
Yeah, it's starting to pay off a little bit. You're right. You don't want to give that guy too much credit for anything.
That's
right. But him and his staff drafted relatively well, man. Yeah.
And the people that say, well, he was right about Koskinen, well, it looks like it's paying off a little bit. But you still go back and say there was no reason to do it that day.
No,
dude, I was off that day. My wife and I were going to a movie. I heard you and Strutty talking about. I thought you guys were punking everybody.
So did I. When Strutty's like, Koskinen's beside, I was like, no, he hasn't. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, here's what you could have done with Koskinen. You could have waited, saw how he played at the end of the year, signed him to a 1-year or 2-year deal at $2.1 million. Like, that's $2 million that you didn't need to spend right now. And you're right. I don't care if he's playing great or not. And he's playing pretty good. But you should have him for about $2 million right now, not $4 million.
Yeah.
Like, it just, that was.
Okay with the Kassian signing?
Yeah, I like the Kassians. I mean, I would have loved
$4 million.
Yeah, I would have loved it if it was 3 for 3. But I'm okay with 3.25 for 4.
And that final year is such a low. It makes it, if you are trading or something.
Yeah,
like that,
exactly. You'll be able to move him if you feel like it. But Kassian has developed into an extremely important piece of the Oilers. I honestly believe that. And he's an incredible story because I didn't when he went to the Habs and was screwing around there. I was like, this guy's done. Who's going to give him a shot? And then the Oilers did it, and that was a Chiarelli move too, wasn't it? So.
Yeah, there's a little bit of credit for sure. Yeah. When Tom Wilson got that big contract, I was like, what?
I know.
And then Zach Kassian is filling that role like a Tom Wilson is in Washington.
If you actually look at those numbers, Kassian deal's pretty darn good compared to what Tom Wilson got. And Wilson's good. If you look at the league though, like Wilson, big part of what the Capitals did to win a cup. What did the Blues do last year? They brought in Pat Maroon, who, Maroon doesn't get around as ideally as you would want one of those guys, but he had an impact in the playoffs last year. Where did he go this year? Tampa, who was knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, and said we need one of those guys. So, you don't have to have those guys, but like when Chicago was winning their cups, then was Eager on one of those teams, and then they had Bickle. And
David Bolin was the bigger guy.
Some guys who could grind and kind of get in people's faces too. So Buffalo was on their first cup teams. So, if you look at the majority of these cup-winning teams...
Boston Bruins have those guys.
Bruins had those guys. Pittsburgh Penguins had Matt Cook running around being an idiot on, I think, at least 1 or 2 of those teams. They have those guys, man. They're series changers. Yeah. That's what they are.
And that's, Kassian can be that. We saw that in the playoffs, obviously, when he had the lamb chops going there the 1 year. So we know he can be... a difference maker in the playoffs. And listen, Ken Holland so far, just that, if all he did so far was the James Neal Lucic trade, and really other than calling a few guys up, that's really what he did. But he just changed the complexion. And then you look at this last 2 games, where has Milan Lucic been in those games? Like, that's a big question Flames fans are asking. And I think maybe Johnny Gaudreau too. Like, where are the big guys? And that can certainly change. The Flames still won that game, but He changed the complexion of the Oilers with that trade.
Yeah, he 100% did. And I like some of the other small, like the Sheahan signings and Archibald, like these small guys. He basically said, we want guys who can move a bit, who can play a role. And that's what they got. And it's kind of worked out. Whereas in Calgary, like the Lucic thing, not fighting his friends, like, I get it. I wouldn't want to do that, but that's your job, man. That's your job. It's not like you're going to the bar after these guys and you're fighting them there. This is your job. You don't even have to beat the hell out of them. You have to drop your gloves, grab onto Jujar for a second, and be like, "Hey, I'm just going to give you a couple pops in the side of the head." The Gaudreau one concerns. If I was a Flames fan, would concern me a ton because last year in the playoffs, non-factor. I think in his last 9 playoffs games, he has 0 goals, 3 assists. Last year he had 36 goals. This year he's got 13. I don't think he's been the same player since being a disappointment in the playoffs last year. So then you're sitting there going, okay, well, what if they miss the playoffs this year? What if they make the playoffs and he's a non-factor again? Then I think it comes down to, I mean, legitimately thinking about moving him for a type of guy that fits in with Monahan and Tkachuk and can play that type of game that you clearly want to establish when you've got guys like Lucic and Ronaldo in the lineup at the same time. You know, like... So he's extremely skilled. I think when he got the puck on his stick, he's like a top 10 guy in the league. But these last 2 games have been very playoff-like, and I literally barely noticed him at all. Yeah.
Okay, so the Oilers have, Ken Holland has an opportunity here to add at the deadline if he wants, or wait to the draft with the chip of Jesse Puljujarvi. Yeah. This is something you've been obviously pretty passionate about on Twitter, and then I think some tongue-in-cheek. I mean, I love it when media guys go back and forth, and you and Bob got into it a little bit.
We go a bit,
you know? And that's fun. Bob is he can dish it out, and he's a big boy, and he takes it when you give it back and forth. But is it part shtick, or is it part just you want to point out how well he's playing?
Well, I mean, I just feel like you point out how well he's playing, and everybody, including some of the boys that we're buddies with, just want to take shots at the league the entire time.
Yeah, I don't get that.
I don't
the whole beer league comparison is ridiculous.
People just take it too far. Think about this for a second. If he had not come over yet and was the best player in Finland this year, which by all accounts he is, and was a point per game on the best team in the league,
it would be going
he
nuts.
Would be a top 10 prospect in all of hockey right now. But he's been here. It didn't work out, so he's gone back over. So he's got this baggage that carries him down, which is why I think some team is sitting out there still going, look, this guy got oilered, which was a thing with the previous regime. We'll see how the Holland thing works. This is a fresh slate. But this guy got oilered in his development. He's the best player in the league where Rangers fans are losing their mind about Lauri Pajuniemi right now, who I watched at the Spangler Cup and is a pretty good prospect. Got like 10, 15 points less than Yessi over there right now. They're losing their mind. He's going to make the team. He's going to be a stud. And people here think that this guy doesn't have any value. So I think there's a team out there waiting for the right time. And they're going to try to get him and think that they can save him. Maybe they can't, but I mean, he's having
to write this guy off right now. It's ridiculous.
He's 21.
I know.
He's 21. Miku Koivu didn't come over till he was like 21 and played a year in the American League.
Timo Solani came over.
A lot of these guys.
Like, this is when
didn't
he
come over till he was like 2021. Like,
yeah, this is when he should be playing in the NHL now. His first season.
Yeah, he should be one of these guys
played in the AHL
who should be called up with Yamamoto and Benson right now. Like, that's where he should be. And it's funny because I don't know what the rush is, because Kotkaniemi, they brought him over. Looked pretty good last year, struggling this year. He's got a year and a half in the NHL. He's in the American League right now. And Kaapo Kakko, who is supposed to be maybe the best out of all these guys, he's struggling right now. So these teams that are bringing over these Finnish kids, like, why is it okay to throw all these Finnish kids in at 18, but not any of these other North American kids unless you're drafted first overall? So it weirds me out a little bit. But like, I watch a lot of almost all of the highlights because you can see all the goal highlights.
Yeah.
But I've watched a couple of the Champions League games that stream, and he's still playing the same way he was playing. Like,
a little bit
he's
of a rover,
looping a bit, and he's a little bit of a rover. But I think if you put him in a spot to succeed, as opposed to having his most career minutes with Milan Lucic, a guy you couldn't wait to get rid of, I think another team's going to give him a chance. I would take that chance as well if I was another team. I'm not 100% sure if it works out.
Do you think it happens at the deadline and the Oilers can get something for this year, or more of a draft situation?
I didn't think it would happen at the deadline, but now that the Oilers are, I mean, if you can move an asset that you are still trying to pass off as though he's valuable to you, when really we know he's not, if you can move him to help a team right now to make a push to get home ice throughout the conference, throughout the divisional playoffs, I think you might be a little more willing to do it. And some of the teams that are selling are teams that have been rumored to have interest in him. So, I mean, wouldn't it be something if he was traded in a deal to get Ryan Strome back? The very guy that he was supposed to play with, and then they traded away. But like, I would still say no. I think it's an off-season draft type of deal. But I think it's more likely that it happens now than it did like a month ago.
Okay. Quickly, around the league, who do you, when you're looking at the standings as we march towards the playoffs, do you think Tampa can get it going again? What are you looking at around the NHL? What interests you?
Well, the Eastern Conference is super top heavy, I think. Like, and which is a good thing for those teams. Like, Washington seems to have kind of got that groove back here that I kind of feel like they might be able to take another run at it.
20 wins on the road.
Well, yeah, and with Holt being net for this year, and then I don't know what happens there next year. I mean, you might be able to make a push. We'll see what they end up doing at the deadline, but I know the Blues got it done last year, and that was my hot take this year, that the Blues wouldn't make the playoffs. Like, I was just like, they got on a hot run with a good goalie. They don't have a lot of top end star talent. Like David Perron's driving their offense right now.
No,
like,
Tarasenko.
No, Tarasenko, when he got out, I was like, oh, for sure they're going to struggle now, but they haven't. They've got a group of really good forwards, not great forwards. They've got a group of really
They've
good
got so much depth.
And Schenn,
Like
and
Bozak
O'Reilly,
on the third line.
These guys aren't McDavid or Draisaitl or these high end offensive guys, but they've got a great blue line, and Binnington's still been good. And but I look at that Eastern Conference with Tampa, with Boston, with Pittsburgh, with Washington, and to me those teams are the elite of the elite in the National Hockey League, and I'll be keeping tabs on how that sorts itself out, because that's going to be a tough road. Whereas if you're Colorado, or if you're St. Louis, let's say, I mean, when you get Colorado or Dallas, like, do you think Dallas is going to scare anybody?
No.
Like, so, and then you get whoever comes out of the Pacific, and it doesn't even look that strong either. And even these wild card teams, like, it's Winnipeg, who can't get their act together right now, and obviously need some help somewhere. And then Chicago,
they might get it now with some cap relief with Bufflin, but
and then Chicago, Minnesota, nobody scares you in the West. So, but there's a lot of teams that scare me in the East. So I think the East is going to be a powerhouse.
St. Louis, to me, is right now, they're the team that we expected to see at the start of last year.
It's true.
Because they brought in all these guys. Then they get on that incredible run. Like, they better make a movie out of that. Like, you imagine the bar scene of that movie, of them singing Gloria, what that would, like, remember those movies, insane. Like those scenes from Miracle? Again,
Yeah.
what's your name? Like, that would be an iconic scene from that movie of the St. Louis
That
Blues.
was such a remarkable
They
run.
get Jaden Schwartz on a chair or something like
Brett
that.
Hull climbing his own statue.
Yeah.
Like, that'd be great.
So I think the Blues are what we thought they were going to be. Not to be like Herm Edwards here, but I think it was Herm, was it?
No, it's Dennis.
Dennis Green.
Dennis Green. Yeah. They are who we
the
thought.
Bears are. Yeah, but anyway, that's who I think we thought they were going to be at the start of the season. It didn't catch until late. And so then we see them great at the start of the season, and we'll see if they can carry it. Obviously, they're going to carry it into the playoffs, but
and
how
like
far?
I said, like, and
who would have thought the St. Louis Blues might have a chance to repeat?
Yeah,
like, I thought they might have just been lucky.
I mean, nobody really repeats anymore.
Other
I mean,
than
it happens every once in a while. Pittsburgh got the job done, but whoever comes out of the East is going to have to go through 2 wars at least, right? Like, so I mean, we'll see if the Blues can cruise along. I mean, the Oilers played the Blues well on Friday. I thought that was a really good game. The Oilers are a weird team, because when they've looked like they might have a letdown this year, they go out and beat some really good teams and then lose to some horrible clubs. So
like that's one stretch where they were losing to Ottawa and everybody else.
What's going to happen in the West is that one of these teams is going to go on the runs that, like, what's Vancouver right now, like 13-3-1 in like their last 17 or something. Like, one of those teams is just going to get hot and they're going to roll through the Pacific. And
well, yeah, like you look at Vancouver, 7 wins in their last 10. Edmonton, 7 wins in the last 10. Calgary had 7 wins in their last 10 before that. So, Vegas is the only team that's really
Vegas.
dropped off.
Vegas could get it going if Fleury's been through so much stuff this year with his dad, so I understand where that's coming from. But if he can refocus here, they might be the toughest out in the playoffs for anybody in the West.
Is Gerard Gallant the strangest firing out of all the firings this year?
It's been a weird year.
Yeah.
But that one doesn't make any sense to me. Like, they lost 4 in a row. And prior to losing that 4 in a row, they were the best team in the division.
Yeah.
So you're like, what is going on here? So something still doesn't add up. And to bring in the guy that had this hated rivalry with your team, man,
and who had just got fired.
Yeah, it still doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what they were thinking. That never added up.
I don't get it either. Okay, let's talk a little bit about growing up. You grew up in Cranbrook, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I grew up on a farm just outside of Cranbrook, about basically smack dab between Cranbrook and Kimberley.
How close were you to Skookumchuck?
Skookumchuck would have been about, and Skookumchuck stinks, eh? Like,
it does.
Oh, it's gross. I'd be about probably 50 minutes.
Okay.
45 minutes from Skookumchuck.
My friends' aunts and uncles ran that trading post for a long time.
Oh, so right down in the corner there?
He had this shirt, and I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, what the heck is Skookumchuck?
Yeah,
and
they got a pulp mill there.
We used to go to Kimberley all the time for ski trips and golf trips, and we'd drive around and that.
Yeah, so you go Skookumchuck, Kimberley, and then you would come down to where I lived and then up to Cranbrook.
So did you go to school in Cranbrook?
I went to school in Cranbrook, but for some reason I played hockey in Kimberley. So I don't know why I don't know why they did that, to be honest with you, because all my friends were in Cranbrook.
Yeah.
And I take the bus home back to the farm, get off the bus. My mom would wait and pick me up with my hockey gear. We get in the car, drive to Kimberley. I get dressed in the car on the way there because practice would be at 4:15, 4:30.
Right.
So I never got to play hockey with my school buddies. I was playing. I saw this whole other group of friends in Kimberley. And what was really weird was that, and this was tough as a kid. So you go in Kimberley, we were not as good at hockey as Cranbrook because it was a smaller community. So we'd go and play against the Cranbrook team, which happened to be all my school buddies, and they'd shit kick us. Yeah. And then I'd have to go to school as the goalie and be like, hey, we put up 16 on you yesterday. I'm like, yeah, I know. The shots were 80-12. Like, thanks, guys. So, that was, I don't know why I played hockey in Kimberley, but I did, yeah. It was weird. Yeah.
But you grew up on a farm, and I was saying to you earlier, my dad grew up on a farm. I grew up in the city of Brandon. I never wanted to be a farm kid, but as an adult, I'm like, man, I would love to be on a farm. Did you love being on a farm, like chores and animals and all that?
Yeah, sometimes it was a little bit of a pain, but we lived on the farm till I was 15. We moved in grade 9. My dad sold it because he was busy with work because he had a full-time job still as a jail guard with the city of Cranbrook.
Oh, wow.
So,
and the farm.
So he'd do 2 days, 2 nights, and then be farming the rest of the time. So he was super busy, super committed. And I think at some point they're just like, okay, you know what? Like, farm life's been great, but my grandpa had moved on from farming. So my dad's farm now, and it's just like, we want to do something different.
It's a hard life, man. You're so dependent on so many other things.
Lots of things. So, but it was great. Just growing up was having all that space. Mm-hmm. Like for my kids now, I'm like, man, I wish they had that space. I'd go outside and I'd be gone for 4 hours, and my parents wouldn't worry about me because there's nobody else around.
That's
right. And it was awesome. I grew up playing hockey at the 2 nets, and the cows were in the field. So
awesome,
I just run around them, and
it was fun.
Yeah, exactly. So it was. Yeah, it was. I did love it. One of my jobs when I was 19, I guess, coming back from school, I got a job from March or April, I guess, early May to August, working on a farm.
Nice.
So I did that for a summer, and I loved it. It's hard work, but it's also relaxing. Like you're not thinking about much. You're just going about your daily routine.
It's kind of peaceful a little bit.
Yeah, I got to the point where I'd be up early helping my dad move irrigation pipes and stuff in the summer, and it's special. The special times, man.
Sure.
Living in town, you don't get that. You don't have that opportunity. So
I would bond with my dad by him saying, "Get the hell outside and mow the lawn."
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, you're not going to come push the lawnmower with me, and we can bond here.
It was way different. And so my when it was haying season, I drive the tractor when I was 14, 15, do the raking. And my dad would come behind me with the baler, and we'd do that, and then we'd all haul the bales together after. And my mom kind of grew up on a farm as well, so she was like a farm girl. And then I had 2 sisters. My one was a couple years younger than me, so she was getting involved. And then I have a sister who's 10 years younger than me too, so she was very little at the time still. But it was great. We grew up. my grandpa and grandma lived on the, like, our farm was separated by the road that kind of went
My
up.
wife the same way.
Yeah,
Her
my
grandparents lived across the road.
lived across the road.
Yeah.
So we would just hop on our bikes, ride across the road, hang out with grandma and grandpa, go help grandpa with farming and stuff. It was a great life, man.
Yeah.
Like I would not have changed that for the world. It was good. I wish we would have held on to it a little bit longer. It would have been fine. But it probably would have completely changed my life.
Oh.
Like I might still just be living in a house across from my dad and running the farm, you know, like,
Which would still be fun.
which would be great. Like that's kind of what I thought my life was going to be.
Yeah.
And I was okay with it. You know, it was all right.
So tell me, you wanted to be this do this for a living for a long time, as we found out in One Timers. Tell me about school. Where'd you go to school, and how'd you get into right away, or did you wait?
I no. Well, I first year after high school, I just worked at Save On Foods, just hung out with my buddies, saved a little bit of money. Then I applied to get into the broadcast program at Lethbridge Community College, and first year I applied, I didn't get in. And I was rattled. I was like, how did I not get, like, it pissed me off, to be honest with you. I was just like, come on. So I'd already planned on moving to Lethbridge because I thought I was going to get in. Yeah. So instead I applied to the university, got into the University of Lethbridge. So I was just like, well, I might as well just go to university for a year. Maybe I find something else that I like. Like, so I started going to university, hated it. Like, I was not a books and study and write papers and shit. That just wasn't for me. So I applied for the broadcast program again in like January, went and did all the interviews and stuff. And then that time I got accepted.
Okay.
And then I went to, 2 years in Lethbridge, and it was great. It was good. That program was different than the one they have up here in Edmonton because you did TV and radio the whole time. You didn't have to decide which way you wanted to go. We just sort of alternated. And I like that because I've worked in both obviously since. And I thought it prepped me really well. And I love Lethbridge. Like, I left after I graduated and stuff, and I ended up going back, and I loved it there. It was good. And the college program was great. I loved it.
I tried to get into the journalism course at Red River College in Winnipeg. Same thing. I didn't get in. I'm like, but that's what I wanted to be. Yeah. What am I going to do now? And so I'm like, okay, I'll go into broadcasting, go to this small school in Saskatoon, which has produced some pretty good broadcasters, and Drager, and my brother went there, and so tiny school. But second,
I was so devastated.
Like, you're just thinking, like, what am I going to do now? This is my dream.
Yeah, I still remember. I was playing basketball on my driveway. And I had a sick hoop. It was a glass backboard chain mesh. It was awesome. So I'm playing basketball, and my mom's like, hey, letter from the college came. I was just like, all right. So I go and I open it up, and it said we couldn't get you in. And I was devastated, man. I was just like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a broadcaster. When I found out that I couldn't get in the first year, I was just like,
it's crushing.
I started crying. I was like 19. I was just like, what am I going to do? Like, this is my life.
Yeah.
And then, it obviously worked out in the end, but
it's like your first girlfriend that you break up with. You think your life is over.
Yeah,
right?
I did. Yeah. And my first girlfriend that I broke up with, she was a farmer too. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, I'm going to marry her. We're going to have the farm. And yeah, that didn't happen.
It did not happen.
No.
So you go to college, and then you get into your career. And like most of us, you start in some small towns.
Yeah. I started in a really small town up in High Prairie. And it's funny because our teachers were like, take the first job you get no matter what, just to get in, start to build a resume and stuff. So we got a contract. My buddy and I were doing a documentary on, I can't remember what it was, but we won like $5,000 in this contest.
Nice.
So I had we split it. So I had like $2,500, and back then that was a ton. So I just kind of hung out in Lethbridge for a couple of months, sending out demos and stuff. And then I got offered to go up and be a news guy at 1020 CKVH in High Prairie. So it was funny. My grandpa and my dad moved me up there, and I basically put everything I could own into my Ford Taurus, drive up there. I got to Barrhead, and I'm looking around Barrhead, and I'm like, oh my God, like, where am I going? And the person in Barrhead is like, why are you moving to High Prairie? And I'm looking around Barrhead, and I'm being like, oh my God.
Barrhead's chirping me?
Yeah, what's High Prairie like? So I moved up there, and I was only there for 3 months. It was an interesting 3 months. But it was good. That radio station, man, was like this size. Yeah. Like, this is like your room right here. Like, it was me, morning show girl, and a sales manager. And then at 10 o'clock, when we finished like the local morning show, they'd flip it over to like the Cat Country Network across the province. And that was it for the day. So yeah, it was good. It was all right. I hated news.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I didn't like
I did news on TV, and like after like the the accident I had to go to where a person got decapitated. I'm like,
buddy.
yeah, I'm going to work my ass off to get it back into sports here.
news
But I had to
is
start
nothing me.
somewhere.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
So you got to do that. So you go from High Prairie and then to Grand Prairie?
No, what happened? No. I went, I was at High Prairie, and then, remember Rob Kerr?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody knows Kerr. So Kerr had left to go to Calgary at the time. And so Gregor took over Kerr's show, and Kerr
On a different station.
yeah,
though.
it was on
Yeah.
CJCA at the time.
yeah.
But they had anysportanytime.com going, and Kerr had been doing play-by-play there, and then Gregor and AJ Jakubic were all there.
Right.
And they needed a new play-by-play guy to be like the third man on the totem pole. So when I was in college, I volunteered and did color for the 4A basketball championships with Rob and AJ when they were down in Lethbridge. So I knew them a little bit from there. So I kind of applied, and John Short and Shorty, I think for the most part, interviewed me, and they're like, okay, we want you to come and do play-by-play for Any Sport Anytime. So I moved to Edmonton, and I worked with like Gregor and Fraze back then at the other station, just doing online play-by-play. And we called AJHL, ACAC, the Edmonton Chimos women hockey.
Anything you could do.
Yeah, anything. I would basically call anything. And back then it was like all over the province. So we were driving to Red Deer. I went out, did like sprint car racing in Drayton Valley, like whatever John Short would sell for that, you'd go call it. And it was so cool being around John Short. Like I didn't grow up in Edmonton, so I didn't know at the time like how awesome he was.
An icon.
But I got to know him, right? So I did that for a year, and then in the non-hockey season, I went down to Lethbridge, worked for the Lethbridge Bulls baseball team in the Western Major Baseball League. Then when that season ended, I came back up, was working with the guys again. But then like midway through that year, they shut it down because the guys all moved to Team 1260.
Right.
And they're like, we don't have any work for you anymore. And the whole time I'd been working at Save on Foods in the morning and then doing play-by-play at night. So I was just like, well, what am I supposed to do? So I moved back to Lethbridge again, started working with the Lethbridge Bulls again. I did another year with the Bulls. And then
As play-by-play?
no, I was like media relations.
Oh, okay,
but actually, part of that gig, I lined up a Saturday night play-by-play at the university station. So I called 10 baseball games.
Baseball games are fun,
which is, it's so different than everything
It's
else.
so relaxed.
It's so
so much
relaxed.
time.
I would just be sitting there. I'd be having a beer. I'd be having some popcorn. It was just like...
So you were basically Harry Carey then?
Yeah, pretty much.
Schamberg and I were having some Budweiser.
I had a color guy named Brian Jeanette, and he like knew everything about Lethbridge baseball. He'd been around forever. So he would just... So it was great. And then... so I went back and did that, and then, well, I guess it was midway through the year they shut down. The baseball season didn't start till May or whatever. So I went back to Lethbridge and worked at Leon's Furniture.
Okay.
And I hauled furniture because my buddies were one of the managers there. So was on the furniture truck for like 4 months, and then got on with the Bulls again. And then I applied and got on at Country 95 down there doing weekend news.
Okay.
So I worked for the baseball team and the furniture store during the week, then go read news on Saturday, Sunday. And I did that for, probably about 8 months. And then they offered me a full-time job at the news station. And what happened was Brad Curl left the Hurricanes to go be the hitman guy. And they're like, okay, well, you can take Curly's spot in the newsroom. So I was like, perfect. So I slid in there and I did news for 2.5 years. And did color on the Hurricanes broadcast for a year with Marlon Martins. And then we lost the radio rights in Lethbridge. And I tried to get the play-by-play job at the news station, but I burned some bridges with some of the people that had... Anyway, I didn't get it. And so then, it's funny, I was like, that's it, I'm out. I'm done with broadcasting. I'm going to go into radio sales.
Oh, okay.
So the sales guy, he's like, you'll be great in sales. And I was just like, I don't want to do sales, but I'm sick and tired of making like $900 a month and, not getting anywhere. So I had the sales binder sitting there, and I was going through it, and I got a call from my old news director who moved to Calgary, and he goes, I'm somebody from Fort Mac's going to call you. They want you to come up to Fort Mac and do a morning show and do the Barons play-by-play. So this random guy calls me, and they're like, Pete Curtis gave us your name, and would you like to come up? And I was just like, you know what? I'm in. Like, I was done. I was just like... So thank God they called me, because I would have been like a radio sales guy and I would have hated my life.
You probably would have quit.
Yeah. So
and then from there to here, right?
Yeah, for 2 years in Fort Mac. Great 2 years up there. Actually, I loved Fort Mac. Met my wife there, and then came down here, and it's 10 years here now.
It's such a good story of perseverance. I mean, Darren Dreger was on my podcast. He almost quit to become a real estate agent.
That close, right?
Like he was looking through the books and doing this. He was about to quit, and then he got the call to go to Winnipeg. And I remember as a kid, like in my first little broadcasting, I'd be like in the boardroom at CKX TV, making VHS tapes, thinking I'm never gonna get out of there. And then I got to Red Deer, same thing, never gonna get you just think you get so frustrated sometimes. And think of it, now you're doing, the number one morning show in the city.
Yeah.
You're doing hockey and football play-by-play on a national network when you could have quit, and who knows what you'd be doing right now. Broadcasting is so much about perseverance.
Yeah, you got to grind through it, man. Like when I got my first job in Lethbridge, they're like, and your salary for the year is $18,500. Yeah. And I was like, sweet. Like, I'm in. Like, I've made it. And then when they called me, they're like, do you want to come up to Fort Mac? Here's the number. I was like, I called my dad. I was like, you'll never believe. Like, so it was, but yeah, like, I still work like 2 or 3 jobs. Like,
yeah.
But like, I just, at the time when I was doing the furniture, baseball,
you just think it's never
the
going to
radio,
happen. Yeah.
And then I was also doing a podcast way back in the day for Hockey's Future.
Yeah.
Hockey's Future Radio. Like before podcast was a thing, I just upload the audio file and you could download it. So I was doing like 4 things, and I was just like, I remember I was dating a girl at the time. She was just like, why are you doing all this stuff? And I was just like, well, I want to be a sports broadcaster one day. Like I'm going to keep going. And yeah, so then you kind of get one call and go to Fort Mac, and kind of changes your life.
So what's it like when you're in the booth now on the CFL on TSN, or you're doing the Spangler Cup, and you're living, you're so close to realizing your dream of being an NHL play-by-play guy?
Yeah, it's surreal. Like for people who have known me for my life for the last 20 years, they get how special it is. Like I'm close and it's going well, but like calling a CFL game it's kind of like that's start to realize. Like the going to the Spangler last year was awesome. And then when another opportunity pops up with the CFL, you're like, holy smokes, like these guys might like me, or they like how I work, or, they like the call or whatever. So it just motivates you to want to keep going, right? Because you go from reading weekend news hung to the nuts because you're out till midnight because you're like, who cares? You're not going to make it, to now having a chance to be like that close to what you set out to do, buddy. It just motivates me more. Like if I don't get to call an NHL game at some point in my life now, I'm going to feel like a major disappointment. So I love calling football. I mean, but the goal was hockey when I started. So if I can do both and then somehow still do a morning show that I like doing, I don't know how that's going to be possible. I'll have to make a choice at some point. But the Spanglers, they're all very cool opportunities. You're working with such professionals. Like I've been doing Bears. Well, we did Bears hockey together and stuff. Like you don't do university hockey for 10 years for very minimal money to just do it. I mean, you love it, right? You love it. You love calling it. It's an opportunity to get reps in and keep working. And then maybe if somebody takes notice one day and you get an opportunity, it works out. So, it's close, but it's awesome right now. Like even if I just called CFL games and Spangler for the rest of my life, that would be awesome.
It's an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, it'd be awesome, but it kind of motivates you to do more.
You guys have a awesome podcast as well. 2 guys and a goal.
Yeah, that's going. Those guys came to me for a while. They wanted me to do a podcast, and I was super busy. And my
Oilers
wife,
Nation.
My wife was working, and I'd been writing and doing some stuff with them. And then this opportunity came up for my wife to stay home with the kids. And I was just like, hey, well, if I can secure some extra funds, and then let's do it. So I went back to the Nation Boys and I was like, hey, I'm in, like, let's do it. They're like, perfect, let's go. And then I said, but if I do it, I want a couple of guys with me. Like, I don't want to do just an hour podcast by myself, and it wouldn't have the same sort of, cause they're like, we want it to kind of be like your radio show, but like more hockey driven. So I was just like, well, let's get Gage and Cass, cause I know those guys listen to the radio shows. So they kind of get me and I get them. And so, yeah, those 2 guys are great. They got great stories. We've been having a few guys in studio like you do as well. And like, it's going really well. And you know what? I like it because it's fun for me. Like it doesn't feel like work stuff.
That's right.
Like,
yeah.
I look forward to going down and hanging out with Gage and Cass twice a week for an hour, just bullshitting. And I think that comes across. And it's going. I like it. It's going really well so far.
Okay. I got about 10 minutes left with you. So I'm going to go through people that you were. I want you to give me one word for the following people.
Oh, is this going to get me in trouble?
I don't. It shouldn't. It's people you work with.
All
Just
right. Okay.
when I say the name, you give me what pops into your mind.
All right.
Are you ready?
Okay.
Let me just Lieutenant Eric.
Hard worker.
Low tide.
Lovable.
He is really lovable. Yaremchuk.
Talented.
Jameson.
Leader.
Awanek.
Boss. Like, he's going to be the boss one day. It's that simple.
Gregor.
Salesman.
Yeah.
For sure. That dude is an unbelievable salesman.
He's scheduled to come in here next week. I can't wait to hear how all that started.
That dude, he grinds for sure.
Hallie.
Underrated.
Yeah.
I think Hallie's a good broadcaster, man. I think one day there's bigger things coming from. And he's probably the most knowledgeable NFL guy on the whole station.
He is in the whole station. That's why he was my NFL expert when I had my daily show.
He's great. I want to hear him talk more about the NFL.
Struds.
Hilarious.
Hernan.
Oh man, how would I say underused?
Yeah.
Can I say that? Like,
well, especially now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like,
going back to last March.
You work with Hernan.
Yeah.
Like, Hernan will be bigger in this market as he continues to get more opportunity. Like, that's why we got him on the pod. I got him on the podcast.
He's so passionate.
Actually, that's a good word for Hernan. Like, sometimes angry.
Yeah.
But I think people, like him and Hallie, like those guys, they're different.
Yeah.
But they're both extremely talented, very opinionated. But yeah, Hernan's, he's got some fire in his belly for sure.
Gazzola.
Beautiful.
I was gonna say hair,
handsome man.
I don't think I missed anybody. You guys haven't.
No, we haven't. Hey, we definitely don't hire anybody.
Yeah, I'd be a little bit pissed off if all of a sudden there's like a giant hiring bonanza
You're
going on.
not going to believe the 4 new guys we hired for the night show.
Yeah, we're doing a 7 till 4 in the morning show now, and we've hired a whole bunch of new people.
You were there, and we miss you, and it's a good group of guys.
It is.
Like, we got a good group of guys. We can mix in a couple girls. I mean, probably, to get different voices.
Might be nice,
but it's a good group of guys, and I think we do a really good job on the station.
I tried mixing in a few girls on my show with Battle of the FM Stars, and then 2 weeks later I got my release. So
that was a fun little bit.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Okay. TV shows. What shows do you love? Like, do you have a favorite series?
Like current or all time?
All time.
Quantum Leap. Quantum Leap is my favorite series.
Did you hear Tarantino is interested in doing a remake?
I saw that from a time. I'm a total time travel nerd. Like, I love time travel. If you don't even know, I would love to travel through time. But so Quantum Leap with Sam Beckett leaping around from spot to spot, putting right what once went wrong. Like, if they could bring him back as the older guy who's helping somebody else leap, I think it would be an amazing idea. But I used to watch Quantum Leap. Like, my dad got me into it when I was in high school, and then I would get up in university, and it used to be on at 7 a.m. for some reruns. Yeah. And I hadn't watched them all yet, so they were all new to me. So I would get up at 7 a.m. and watch it. And my roommate would come out and be like, "Hey man, let's go to school." I'm like, "No, I'm going to finish the episode, go back to bed." He's like, because I had no motivation when I was in university, because I was just waiting to go to college.
That's right.
So I just binge. I've probably watched Quantum Leap, the entire thing front to back, 7 or 8 times.
You know how weird
I love that show.
You know how weird that sounds? I had no motivation in university because I was waiting for college.
Yeah.
People usually the other way around, right?
Yeah, but you're right. I was just like, once I got accepted for college in January,
you didn't care
I was
anymore,
done. I just played Tony Hawk all day.
So what else? You're a Sons of Anarchy guy.
Yeah, Sons. Oh man, lots of shows like Sons, The Shield. Have you seen The Shield?
I haven't.
The Shield was done by the guys who did Sons, but first.
It's on my list.
It's amazing. The Walton Goggins guys in that. Justified was a great show. I liked Prison Break. I'm a reality TV junkie too. I'm Big Brother religiously. Frustrates me a little bit, but I like the concept of that show. Lost. I watched Lost.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, crushed it. Love Game of Thrones. I've rewatched Game of Thrones twice too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I love Game of Thrones. What other ones did I like? And that pretty much covers most of it. Oh, Fringe. I don't know if you ever watched Fringe. No. Fringe was like a
Were you a
time
Sopranos
travel,
guy
different.
at all?
No, I never watched Sopranos.
See,
Breaking Bad, it took me a while to get into, but I ended up watching it. I didn't think it was as great as everyone made it out to be. But Sopranos is one I haven't got to. The Wire I haven't got to yet, which people say is really good.
Yeah, that's about Baltimore, I think. The Wire
it's about Baltimore, but. Yeah,
Sopranos was the first one. That was the first one that set kind of the tone for a lot of these.
It really did. You're right,
and it's really good. It's so I watched Sopranos, and I just finished watching Boardwalk Empire with Buscemi.
You know what? I'm 2 or 3 seasons into that. I don't know why, but I get into it, and then
it gets so good.
Another show will come on, and then I'll kind of get lost. But my wife and I were watching Boardwalk for Yeah, probably 2 seasons. That might be one we come back around on. Like we watched Orange is the New Black. Man, House of Cards still haven't finished.
I
stopped that one too.
I had to stop Breaking Bad, and I haven't finished. I'm going to go back. I was watching Breaking Bad when I first went and crashed when I was at Global and went on my leave, and I'm like, I'm depressed enough right now. This show is. I had to stop it, so I'd like to get back into it because I've heard the story gets so much better.
It was good. I didn't love it. Yeah. My wife liked it a lot. I thought it was good though. But like somebody like, this is the greatest show in TV history, and it's not.
Yeah,
it's just
I stopped watching Walking Dead because they kept jumping the shark.
Yeah, we stopped too.
This is just gonna go. Like, listen, if I'm surviving in a zombie apocalypse, I'm putting guts all over me all the time.
Yeah.
If I'm writing for a zombie apocalypse, you can only do that once.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Right. Well, like I think we watched up until the Asian guy got killed.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Negan killed him.
Yes. That's when
I stopped.
When Negan pulled the bat out, my wife was like, I'm done with Walking Dead. And I was just like, you know what? I'm okay with that too. Yeah, when Glenn, So that was
that's when I stopped too.
Yeah.
I haven't picked it up yet.
And it's still going.
I know, that's what I don't get.
It's crazy to me Walking Dead used to be one of the ones where we would make sure we were watching it live.
Me too.
Like it was.
I remember the beginning it came on. I was at Global one night and I worked Sundays and I'm like, this show is on, and it was Halloween. That's when it debuted. I'm oh, zombies and horses. Perfect. I love cowboys. It's and
that one jumped the shark for sure.
It did. Okay, last one.
Okay.
Saddest TV moment.
I got to go with Sons of Anarchy when Opie said, I got this.
That crushed me.
Dude.
That crushed me.
You shouldn't even have brought it up. I'm getting sad right now.
That scene where he's just staring and then you see it happen was... I was a big Tara fan, so when that happened, that really crushed me.
Too.
But the Opie one first was like, wow, they just... one of my favorite characters. And that's what a lot of these shows nowadays, you can't get attached to characters.
No, you can't. Like Ope, when they were going to kill Jackson, Ope was like, no, he turns around and looks at him and says, I got this. And then they pop him. It was...
He does well for a little bit. And then,
man, that was by far probably the saddest TV moment for sure.
You can't get it. I remember when I started watching Game of Thrones, I said to Guy Flaming, I'm like, hey, I'm watching Game of Thrones. I love this Sean Bean guy, man. And he didn't say anything. And then I came back to him. I told him, he's like, yeah, I was going to tell you, don't get attached. Because funny. I'm like, what happened?
When that happened, I remember watching and looking at my wife and being like, well, this show's going nowhere. Like, you just killed off the main character. Game of Thrones is done. And then obviously it ends up being legendary. But nothing will ever top. That was
close second.
That was tough.
Close second for me is the ending of Every Littlest Hobo, when he would just never find a home.
That poor bugger.
Like, that dog was so smart, and he could just never find a home. Like,
how'd that happen? Like,
how does this guy know? He just doesn't want. I don't think he wanted to go home anywhere.
That wasn't good.
He was a bachelor.
Trying to think of other ones. And the Shield had a pretty emotional ending too. But nothing like because Opie had a rough ride, and they were screwing him over, and then that was.
And he looked so cool too. I remember I went up to Eric Greiba one time. He had a toucan. Remember he had the big beard. I'm like, dude, you look so much like Opie. It's badass.
Yeah, Opie was so good. That was tough to see.
Yeah,
that was a tough one.
That was it. Hey man, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks so much for sliding in here today and. Chatting with me. Best of luck with, of course, the morning show. You and Eric do such a fun job. And, of course, Two Guys in a Goalie. Play-by-play, everything, man. You got so much going on. It's exciting.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me in. I'm glad I was able to finally get in here. This is great.
This has been a lot of fun. Dustin Nielsen of TSN 1260 and TSN Play-by-Play here on Sports and More, the podcast.
What do you say goes away? Who do you know when you got nowhere to go?
This is the Sports and More podcast with Dean Millard.
Got nothing to drink. How do you smile when you're no longer a child?
That, by the way, is the sounds of Sweet Bejesus, the official band of Sports and More, the podcast. That was I Got Time from their debut album, Policeman's Creek. Kevin Dabbs and Christian Gutsis make up Sweet Bejesus. You can find their music on Apple Music and download their debut album, Policeman's Creek. All right, that was an awesome interview with Dustin Nielsen. He just has so much passion. You can just tell he really loves his job. And he almost, as he mentioned, didn't have these jobs because he almost quit. So we're going back to Dustin's education for our Acme Meat Market Trivia Contest question. A gift card from Acme Meat Market's up for grabs. Go say hi to Corey, Amanda, their wonderful staff in the Ritchie Market in Edmonton. They're at 9570 76th Avenue. Check out their website at acmemeatmarket.ca. And listen, it might be winter, but for me, it's grilling season all year long. And it doesn't matter how good your rig is, whether it's a barbecue, a smoker, whatever. Doesn't matter how good a cook you are. If you don't start with the right piece of meat, you're not going anywhere. Get the right piece of meat for your grill 12 months a year at Acme Meat Market. So our question is, what city did Dustin attend broadcasting college? What city did Dustin Nielsen attend broadcasting college? That's our Acme Meat Market trivia question. You can win a gift card from Acme Meat Market. And a reminder, only a few franchises left of the 31 available with Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. If you want to bid on yours right now, head to www.airauctioneer.com/UFF sports-NHL-fantasy-franchise-auction. Just like that, you can make your bidding. It's a free account, and then you will be notified if you are indeed outbid. A big thanks to Dustin Nielsen for joining me on the program today. This is a really, really fun conversation. One-timers with Dustin will come out later this week. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe if you do and leave us a review. It means a lot for us to find out what you like or don't like about the show, and then we can go about fixing it. And if you'd like to be a part of the show as an advertiser, we have many affordable options available right now. Please email me at sportsandmorepod@gmail.com. As mentioned, big thanks to Dustin Nielsen for joining me on the show today. We'll chat again next week. Thanks very much for listening and watching. Playtime is over.